Sam Cooke was more than a singer. He was the voice of a generation. But after his sudden and controversial death in 1964, the spotlight shifted from his music to the secrets he left behind. When his mansion was finally opened, what they uncovered shocked even his closest friends. Could these secrets hold the truth about what really happened to Sam Cooke? Let's find out. Cooke's quiet sanctuary. Sam Cooke's rise to stardom was nothing short of meteoric. By the early 1960s, Cooke had become one of the most celebrated voices in America, adored for his smooth sound that blended gospel, rhythm, and blues, and pop with effortless grace. At this turning point in his career, he sought more than just a house. He wanted a sanctuary that spoke to his hard-won triumphs, while offering the peace he often craved away from the spotlight. That search brought him to Los Angeles, where he fell in love with a property in the distinguished Los Feliz neighborhood. Tucked into the hills at 2408 Ames Street, the home carried an air of timeless elegance that resonated deeply with Cooke. It was here that he decided to create a private haven for himself and his loved ones, a place that would serve as both a retreat and a testament to how far he had come from his humble beginnings. The house itself was a striking Spanish-style villa, a design that had become popular in Southern California for its blend of charm and sophistication. Its creamy stucco walls reflected the warm glow of the California sun, while its iconic red-tiled roof stood out against the blue skies. The architecture was graceful yet welcoming, with arched doorways, wrought iron touches, and a sense of warmth that matched Cooke's own personality. Surrounded by greenery and set on a quiet street, the property embodied the tranquility he longed for after long tours and endless recording sessions. Neighbors and friends often admired the house for its beauty, but for Cooke, it was more than an impressive property. It was a symbol of success and a marker of progress. Having grown up in modest circumstances, the villa represented not only his financial accomplishments, but also the fulfillment of dreams that had once seemed distant. Every corner of the home, from the sunlit rooms to the inviting garden, offered a sense of stability, a grounding presence in a life that was increasingly hectic. Even today, the residence remains much as it was in Cooke's time, a quiet reminder of his presence in the neighborhood. To those who pass by, it may look like another elegant home in Los Feliz, but for fans and historians, it holds deeper meaning. Within its walls lived a man who shaped the sound of a generation, a man whose music continues to echo across decades. Yet, as serene and polished as the home appeared, it concealed struggles that weighed heavily on Cooke's private life. Behind the beauty of the stucco walls and the red-tiled roof, there was a story far more complicated than the graceful exterior revealed. Little did the world know that within this peaceful retreat, Sam Cooke was grappling with battles that would eventually shape the tragic arc of his story. Hidden struggles and the fateful night. To many, Sam was the king of soul, a man whose voice melted effortlessly into gospel, rhythm, and blues and pop. Yet behind the spotlight, Cooke was juggling responsibilities that stretched him thin. He had built his career from the ground up, moving from the sacred world of gospel to the broader stage of popular music, a transition that came with criticism from both sides. He carried the expectations of his loyal gospel following while trying to maintain the momentum of his crossover success. Beyond his musical identity, Cooke was also determined to control his destiny in an industry notorious for taking advantage of artists. He established his own record label and publishing company, bold moves at the time that gave him creative independence but also added enormous pressure. Financial management, business negotiations, and leadership all weighed on him, often colliding with the creative energy he needed to thrive as a performer. At the same time, he was deeply involved in civil rights causes, using his influence and platform to call for justice and equality. This commitment was inspiring, but it also exposed him to scrutiny, conflict, and an extra layer of stress. For a man already stretched between art, business, and activism, the balancing act left him vulnerable and restless. Against this backdrop came the tragic night of December 10th, 1964, a night that remains as shocking today as it was then. Cooke had dinner at Martoni's, a popular Hollywood restaurant, before leaving with a woman named Elisa Boyer. They drove together in his brand new Ferrari to the Hacienda Motel, an establishment on South Figueroa Street in Los Angeles. What followed spiraled into chaos. According to reports, Cooke confronted the motel's manager, Bertha Franklin, after believing Boyer had run off with his belongings. Accounts describe him as angry, demanding, and pounding on Franklin's office door. The confrontation quickly escalated. Franklin, who later said she feared for her life, shot Cooke in the chest. He collapsed and died on the scene. The news stunned the world. Sam Cooke was only 33 years old at the height of his career and already an icon. His death left fans reeling, unable to reconcile the image of the smooth, soulful singer with the violent end he met in that small motel. The coroner's jury eventually ruled the shooting a justifiable homicide, but questions lingered. The details of that night, Cooke's behavior, Boyer's involvement, and Franklin's actions have been debated ever since. Many believe there was more to the story than the official account revealed. For those who admired him, the circumstances of his death became inseparable from his legacy, painting a haunting picture of a man who gave so much yet was gone far too soon. After his tragic death, the focus quickly shifted to the investigation, and all eyes turned to his mansion as the world waited to see what secrets might be uncovered behind those doors. Sam's mansion and belongings. After Sam Cooke's untimely death, the curiosity surrounding his life extended beyond the shocking events at the Hacienda Motel to the belongings and legacy he left behind. His mansion symbolized not only his rise to fame, but also his determination to control his career and finances at a time when African-American artists were often denied such independence. The property reflected his success, complete with elegant interiors and a garage filled with expensive cars that showcased his love for style and luxury. Yet what made the aftermath of his death so unsettling was not just the tragedy itself, but the way the investigation unfolded. The majority of official attention focused entirely on the Hacienda Motel, where he was shot, rather than on his home and possessions. The Los Angeles Police Department quickly conducted what many described as a perfunctory and superficial investigation. Critics argued it amounted to a whitewash, reflecting the racial climate of the era. Reports noted that Cooke was considered not worthy of a full probe, a stark injustice considering his status as one of the most influential voices in music. Muhammad Ali, one of his close friends, remarked that if Cooke had been Frank Sinatra, the Beatles, or Ricky Nelson, federal authorities would have led a sweeping investigation instead of dismissing the matter so swiftly. This neglect became even clearer during the coroner's inquest. Lasting only a couple of hours, the proceedings relied heavily on the testimonies of Elisa Boyer, the woman with him that night, and Bertha Franklin, the motel manager who fired the fatal shots. Both women passed polygraph tests, and the case was quickly closed as a justifiable homicide. For authorities, this was the end. For his family, supporters, and millions of fans, the story had only grown more troubling. Attention then turned to what was discovered among Cooke's belongings. At the scene, police found only a money clip with $108 and a few coins inside his sports coat. His wallet and credit cards were missing, despite multiple witnesses seeing him earlier that evening at Martoni's restaurant carrying what was believed to be around $5,000 in cash for Christmas gifts. That larger amount was never recovered, raising suspicions that crucial details had been overlooked or deliberately ignored. Equally disturbing were the accounts of Cooke's physical condition. While official reports described only the injuries consistent with a struggle at the motel, those close to him painted a darker picture. Such injuries had fueled conspiracy theories about the true cause of his death and whether the official ruling of justifiable homicide was accurate. Conspiracy theories and public sentiment. One of the strongest arguments against the official story came from legendary singer Etta James. Having personally viewed Cooke's body before the funeral, she claimed the injuries were far worse than what the autopsy had suggested. According to her, his head appeared nearly severed from his shoulders, his hands were broken and crushed, and his nose mangled. These vivid descriptions contradicted the relatively limited violence mentioned in reports, sparking speculation that Cooke endured a brutal beating before his death. For many, James's testimony suggested that the official version had been sanitized to conceal the true extent of what happened that night. The brevity of the investigation only deepened suspicion. The Los Angeles Police Department conducted a swift inquiry, and the coroner's inquest lasted just a couple of hours. Critics have long argued that systemic racial bias played a role in this neglect, pointing out that Cooke, despite his fame, was treated as unworthy of a thorough process. Some suggested collusion, or at least a deliberate decision to avoid digging deeper into what may have been a more complex crime. This perception of injustice was reinforced by the verdict of justifiable homicide, which many believed was reached far too quickly. Public figures also voiced their distrust. Muhammad Ali, a close friend of Cooke, spoke bluntly about the racial double standards at play. He famously remarked that if Cooke had been Frank Sinatra, the Beatles, or Ricky Nelson, the FBI would have taken charge of the investigation. His words captured the frustration felt by many African Americans at the time, who saw Cooke's death as another example of systemic indifference to Black lives, even when those lives belonged to internationally celebrated artists. Fans and amateur investigators carried these doubts forward, building theories that continue to circulate today. Online forums and survivor accounts reflect a consistent skepticism about the motives behind Cooke's death and the credibility of witness testimonies. Questions persist about the disappearance of large sums of money Cooke was said to be carrying and about missing personal items such as his wallet and clothing. For some, these gaps hint at robbery or a cover-up, while others suspect business-related conflicts given Cooke's growing independence in the music industry and his control over his own label and publishing rights. Ultimately, the public sentiment surrounding Cooke's death remains one of mistrust. The combination of missing evidence, conflicting reports, and the racial climate of the 1960s left many unconvinced by official explanations. While conspiracy theories about his death refused to fade, attention also turned toward the other side of Sam Cooke's story, his complex and often complicated relationships that shaped his personal life. Family ties and complex relationships. Behind the dazzling stage presence and the smooth, soulful voice that made Sam Cooke a household name, his personal life was layered with complexities. To those closest to him, Cooke was not just a star, but a man whose private world was often marked by both tenderness and turmoil. Cooke first married Dolores "Dee Dee" Mohawk, a singer in her own right. Their union, however, was short-lived and fraught with difficulties. By the time their relationship ended in divorce, it was clear that Cooke's rising fame and relentless touring schedule had strained the bond beyond repair. Dolores's life came to a tragic end not long after their separation, when she was killed in an automobile accident. Though their marriage had dissolved, her death was a painful reminder of how fleeting personal connections could be amid the chaos of stardom. His second marriage to Barbara Campbell brought a new chapter in his life, one that produced 3 children, Linda, Vincent, and Tracy. While this marriage brought stability on the surface, it was not without its struggles. Cooke adored his children and found joy in being a father, but the demands of his career often pulled him away from home. A devastating tragedy struck the family in 1963 when their infant son Vincent drowned in the family's swimming pool. The loss left deep scars, and even those closest to Cooke acknowledged how profoundly the event shook him. Though he tried to carry on with his music and public life, the grief weighed heavily on both him and Barbara, straining an already fragile marriage. Cooke's relationships extended beyond his marriages. His fame and charisma often drew women into his orbit, and he became entangled in affairs that complicated his personal narrative. One such entanglement led to the acknowledgement of another child he fathered outside of wedlock. Rather than deny responsibility, Cooke chose to make arrangements to support the child, demonstrating a sense of duty even amid the complications. These situations, however, added tension to his marriage with Barbara and highlighted the double life many entertainers of his era found themselves living, balancing public respectability with private indiscretions. The picture that emerges from these relationships is one of a man caught between personal desires, professional obligations, and the expectations of society. Cooke's love for his family was genuine, but his actions often created fractures that could not easily be repaired. Friends described him as both deeply affectionate and frustratingly elusive, a man whose heart was wide but whose commitments were often tested by circumstance and temptation. These complexities became even more pronounced after his sudden death. The grieving family was left to grapple not only with the loss of a husband and father, but also with the tangled web of relationships and responsibilities he left behind. His children, wife, and others connected to him by blood or circumstance were drawn into the inevitable questions of inheritance, rights, and legacy. The will, estate, and legal aftermath. Cooke was more than just a celebrated performer. He was also a savvy businessman who had worked tirelessly to secure independence in an industry that often exploited black artists. The structure he had built for himself and others became both a source of inspiration and a point of contention after his death. Cooke had established SAR Records in 1961 with partners J.W. Alexander and Roy Crane. The label was groundbreaking, not only because it allowed Cooke to own his recordings, but also because it provided opportunities for other black artists to record and distribute their music at a time when such control was rare. Alongside SAR, he created CAGS Music Publishing, another vehicle for artistic ownership and financial security. These ventures represented his vision of equality and empowerment, standing as proof that an African-American entertainer could control his own creative and business destiny. However, when Cooke died, the ownership and management of these enterprises shifted. Without his leadership, both SAR Records and CAGS found themselves under new control, and the dream Cooke had nurtured of long-term independence did not fully materialize in the way he had intended. The estate itself became the center of disputes and legal wrangling. Sam Cooke left behind 3 children with Barbara Campbell, Linda, Vincent, and Tracy. Sadly, his only son Vincent drowned in 1963 at just 18 months old, a year before Sam's own death. This meant that when his estate was divided, it was his daughters Linda and Tracy who became the primary heirs. Linda Cooke later became involved in the music world herself, performing under the name Linda Womack after marrying Cecil Womack, the brother of Bobby Womack. Her inheritance included not only a financial share of her father's estate, but also a deep connection to the music business that shaped her life. Tracy, the younger daughter, also inherited from the estate, though she lived a more private life compared to Linda. Both daughters received the benefits of Sam Cooke's publishing rights, royalties, and trust arrangements set up after his passing, ensuring that his success continued to support them long after he was gone. While legal disputes and business complications surrounded Cooke's fortune, his daughters remained at the center of his legacy. The royalties from his extensive catalog, songs that continued to sell and inspire generations, provided them with lasting security, tying them directly to the cultural influence their father left behind. Barbara Campbell, Cooke's widow, was thrust into the difficult role of managing not only the family's grief, but also the complex finances and claims against her husband's name. One of the most notable legal challenges came from Bertha Franklin, the motel manager who had shot Cooke on the night of his death. Franklin filed a lawsuit against his estate, demanding $200,000 for damages. Accounts differ on whether the case was quietly settled or dismissed outright, but what is clear is that Franklin did not prevail in her attempt to claim a portion of Cooke's estate. The suit, however, added further turmoil to an already painful chapter in the family's life. But Cooke's true inheritance went beyond dollars and contracts. It was in the timeless power of his songs and the cultural shift he helped ignite. The life journey and legacy. Born in 1931 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and raised in Chicago, he grew up singing gospel before transitioning into popular music. That leap, which was controversial in its time, transformed him from a church favorite into one of the most celebrated voices in American history. With his distinctive blend of gospel roots and pop sensibility, Cooke carved out a path that reshaped what soul music could be and whom it could reach. By the late 1950s, Cooke had already achieved commercial stardom. His debut hit, You Send Me, soared to #1 on the Billboard chart in 1957, selling millions and making him a household name. He followed with a string of timeless hits such as Chain Gang, Wonderful World, and Cupid. Between 1957 and 1964, he achieved an astounding 30 songs in the U.S. Top 40, a feat few artists of any era could match. His ability to move seamlessly between love ballads, upbeat anthems, and socially conscious songs gave him unmatched versatility. What set Cooke apart was not just his golden voice, but also his sharp business instincts. At a time when many black artists were exploited by record companies, Cooke founded SAR Records in 1961, along with his publishing company, Cags Music. This allowed him to own his masters and publishing rights, while also giving a platform to emerging talents like the Soul Stirrers and the Valentinos. His insistence on independence provided a blueprint for generations of musicians seeking creative and financial control of their work. Cooke's artistry also intersected with the rising civil rights movement. His song, "A Change Is Gonna Come," released posthumously in 1964, became an anthem for equality and justice. Inspired by personal experiences with racism and the broader struggle of African Americans, the song captured the era's pain and hope in a way that few others could. It remains one of the most powerful protest songs in American history and continues to be performed at rallies, commemorations, and by new generations of artists. The tragedy of his death at just 33 years old left a void in music and in the cultural fight for justice. Yet his influence only deepened with time. Artists from Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin to modern performers like Rod Stewart and Alicia Keys have cited Cooke as a formative inspiration. His ability to blend raw emotion with technical mastery set a standard that still shapes soul, R&B, and pop. Recognition of his contributions has grown steadily since his passing. Cooke was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in its very first class in 1986. His catalog continues to generate royalties, documentaries, and tributes that reaffirm his place as both an innovator and a voice for social change. Beyond the records and awards, Sam Cooke's true legacy lies in how his music gave dignity, hope, and joy to millions, a legacy that ensures his name will never fade. Do you think the world has truly given him the justice and recognition he deserves, or is his story still overshadowed by the mystery of his death? Share your thoughts below.